Hello and welcome to another episode of Who's Coming to Dinner, this time around featuring the one and only Josh Scar from TalkingSMAC. Hi Josh, how you doing?
Hey Dan, lovely Dan, how you doing?
All a bit of a hearing that. I've got to say as well, I'm kind of cheating a little bit. I've got you on, and if I've got my act together, last week people will have heard Justin being mind wiped because at the moment, at time of recording, I'm doing some reruns, but I'm coming back with a TV and film month in November. So I'm using that theme loosely to get you on for the as your pod generally sort of does a lot of TV and film as well as games and comic books. So I'm getting you on for that. But also wanting to know what you want to eat and who you're going to invite to a dinner party. Yeah, how's Talking Smack going at the moment?
Talking Smack's going all right. This is coming out sometime in November. We've got our Wicked episode coming out, which I believe will actually be a double feature with Wicked and Gladiator 2 if all things stand together, and we should have Justin on for both of those. Then we've also got Moana 2. We would have also just had our Sex Lives of Superheroes book written by Diana McCollum of the Talks from Superheroes Network. Wonderful, hilarious book. Basically, just a bunch of essays written about how certain superheroes would experience sex. It's not as raunchy as it sounds, but it is as funny as it sounds, if that makes any sense.
You've had a run of getting some really good guests on as well, haven't you?
Yeah, we're getting found by some people. I just wish you would turn up in the in the listens a little bit more. I've got to do some due diligence as well and reach out to some people. Like I'd love to reach out to Kyle Higgins before he starts ramping up for Radiant Black again, because they just released issue 30 and 30.5. And then they're going to bank a bunch of issues so they can get back to being monthly starting in February of 2025. So I would love to be able to get the Massive Verse team back on to discuss with them about where they see their books going now that like their first few big arcs are done. So it's exciting, and I just need to stop being shy, and in some cases, you want to not be too pushy with people, especially high profile people in industries that you really respect and enjoy, like comic book writing. But you also want to try and maintain a relationship to some extent, so you can be like, hey, I have a gap, do you want to come in and talk about whatever you're doing? I've seen guys from like the Ocho Duo podcasting hour, Power Hour. They have a great relationship there. The Nerd Initiative, our buddy Marty from the Nerd Initiative, has just a fantastic relationship with those guys. So like, part of me is really jealous. I'm like, well, they've already got friends, I don't want to be interjecting myself. But I also know that it's something I want to do, so I need to just swallow my pride and be like, I'm sorry if I'm being annoying, but please acknowledge me.
Often maybe the direct approach is just yeah, let's do it, let's get on. So maybe 2025 is the year.
I sure hope so. I really want to do more comic stuff. Money's a little tight right now, so I did not get my copies of Radiant Black 30 and 30.5. But once I do, I'm gonna reread the Catalyst War, which is Kyle Higgins has kind of proposed it at, or posed it as what Radiant Black had been building up to. Like this was his original concept, but he needed to pave the road to be able to get this diverged timeline double issue release thing going. And it took him 25 issues to get there. Now 10 issues later, between the two issues from 26 and 26.5 to 30 to 30.5, from what I've read so far, without having read 30 and 30.5, I just love his work and all that stuff. So I'll probably release just my impressions of Radiant Black up through 30, 30.5, as well as just my personal review of the Catalyst War, just because again, like this is my favorite comic book that's being published right now. Power Rangers has ended. The new Ninja Turtles is supposed to be really good. I haven't had a chance to read any of those yet, but I really want to dive back more into the comic stuff. But the comic stuff has kind of faded to the sideline a little bit because of just timeliness with like big blockbuster stuff we want to talk about. And then, like you mentioned, we've had some really good guests come out of the woodwork where publicists have been like, hey, do you want to talk to these guys? And we're like, yes, please.
Yeah.
like almost, needing some new pants, because the nerves are so huge when you're talking to people like Michael Hirsch or Douglas A. Burton or Diana McCallum, who is a podcaster I've been listening to for over 10 years. I think I've been listening to the Talks from Superhero podcast for 13 years. So being able to sit down and chat with her about her book as well as her podcast and just talking nerd stuff for an hour. It was a real pleasure. And obviously, it's something that I wouldn't trade any comic book talk for, just because it's an experience that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
No, absolutely. So a lot of big things to come on your show. Also, I heard that name again. That Justin, he gets around, doesn't he?
He sure does. He filled in for me in a pinch for our what ended up being our 3-year back anniversary episode. I was not feeling well, and he filled in for me 3 hours before we were supposed to start recording because I was trying to will myself to feel better. But I don't think I could have stayed up to our normal 8 o'clock recording time. And yeah, Justin filled in wonderfully and had a great conversation with Alex about how Hollywood has learned the wrong lessons from the John Wick franchise.
Yeah, I listened to that today, and I say it tongue in cheek because obviously he's on here a lot as well. But yeah, he's perennial host now, isn't he? It feels like
Being on the Pacific Coast, West Coast in the US, he gets the benefit of having 2 extra hours. So I think that's where he gets a lot of his leeway, because at least for me, it's 2 extra hours. Anyone on the East Coast is 3. So he can record and then be like, oh man, I've still got like 5 more hours until midnight. What do I do with myself? Where I'm like, oh man, it's 10:30, Justin. I can't keep going. He's
yeah,
like, oh, it's
yeah.
only 8:30. What are you talking about?
He's got 8 hours on me. So yeah. And yeah, before we kind of get into it, the other thing I wanted to bring up, so in our WhatsApp chat at time of recording, we've had the A3 comet. Is that right? I think it's called.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've
And you
been able to
spotted
get a
it,
couple of
and
pictures.
yeah, me and my wife, we've got out literally 4 nights in a row. We had a clear night tonight, but I think it was too late. Yeah, the last few nights has just been nothing but cloud where I am. So we've gone out to try.
The first night I saw it, I was able to like make out the tail
Mm.
with the naked eye. But I saw it again last night at time of recording, and I couldn't see it with the naked eye. I had to bust out my phone, and my phone was able to filter the lights and the colors, and I was able to get a good picture of it. But I have too much light pollution. I live in a very small town of like, I think maybe 900 people, maybe 1,100 people at most. You couldn't even fill a baseball or basketball stadium to like 10% with the people in my neighborhood. But it's a tight community with a lot of infrastructure. So we have lots of lights, and both my neighbors on either side of me have very bright porch lights that they love leaving on all night. So I just can't see anything if it's not, one of the closer, brighter stars, especially if the moon is out too. Like you might as well just not be able to do anything. But I love celestial events
Yeah, you saw it. You saw it.
once every 80,000 years. So
That's exactly it. So yeah.
our bloodlines will probably be completely gone at that point if unless we're very lucky.
But hopefully our pods will still be there somewhere. So
Somewhere amongst the digital decay.
yeah, yeah. Right, we're going to hear a promo. So the promo is a new one, well, at the time we're recording this, from the Game Club pod. Now, there's a lot of mutual admiration and respect that goes on between you, Joey, Joey, you, me, Joey, Joey, me, you, all 3 of us, right? And I love that. And literally just before we started to record, I messaged Joey and I said, look, Joey, I'm recording with Josh in 10 minutes. Have you got any words for him? And he's asked me to read this word for word. And I'll let you have a right to reply, but he's asked me to read this word for word. And I did promise. He said, Josh, you're a wonderful human being. When I think of Josh Scar, I think of pride. I think of majesty. I think of beauty. I think of joy, happiness, and adoration. Thanks for being you. Thanks for TSMAC. And I wish nothing but the best for you and yours at all times.
Joey just always knows the right buttons to push to make me turn just the brightest red.
He's a very
I think he's mostly
man.
Just talking about my hair at this point.
You do have wonderful hair, right? And I think with that, let's hear the trailer.
Welcome to my friendly game club where everyone is welcome. The podcast where we share, we play, we run and sing. No, we don't run, but we do sing.
Hey kids, are you looking for a new favourite fortnightly video game review podcast?
Then boy howdy have we got the show for you.
We take a different game every 2 weeks and we review them just like a book club.
You can find us on all good podcasting platforms.
And some of the sketchy ones too.
Simply search for the Game Club podcast and join the club today.
That's great, isn't it?
I love it. It makes me it makes me miss Toys R Us even more.
Yeah.
It's not anywhere close to the Toys R Us theme song, but it still just makes me feel like a kid again. And then I just want to be like, because I'm a Toys R Us kid.
Although some of the stories they'd probably be reading, I don't know. Right, I think we should move on. So, Josh, you're hosting dinner party. I'm guest number one. I've already got my feet up. Well, I wouldn't put my feet up because that's rude, but I've already got my food, my drink. You're going to have 3 courses. You're going to have 3 guests. We'll do a course and a guest at a time. And yeah, you're just going to explain why you would have that course and why you'd invite that person. So yeah, what are we having to start?
So the first course, are appetizers. I'm going to preface this whole thing with saying I'm very basic. I have a very what would be the proper term? An untamed palate. I don't like experimenting with things. I don't like fish. I don't like seafood. I don't like spicy food. I am a meat and potatoes kind of guy. And I just I don't want to do anything that's going to distract from the people that are coming. I just want people to enjoy what they're eating and enjoy the time. I don't want to make anything like too extravagant. So the first one I have, I eat these as like a whole meal because I'm a pig, but there's a chain restaurant in the US called Old Chicago where it's based around a style of Chicago style pubs. It's a pizza place. They do burgers and fries and stuff too. But they have these amazing appetizers called Sicilian pepperoni rolls. They come out in packs of, or like a tray of 8 that like it's supposed to be like your pre-pizza pizza or your pre-burger pizza or something like that. But you're only supposed to have like one. I tend to eat the whole thing or at least most of them because again, they're delicious. But it's just a pizza dough rolled over mozzarella cheese and pepperoni and with some added herbs and stuff. But it's absolutely delicious with a good marinara. So everyone gets like 1 or 2 of them. And I think it's a good way to start the night because who doesn't love pizza, especially if it's in a fancy little roll?
I love pizza. I absolutely love pizza. And yeah, I'm with you. I love like little finger foods or appetizers, things like that.
These things are pretty massive.
Oh, are they?
Like I've got this cup, like they're probably about this big.
Oh, okay.
And like probably about that tall, a little taller than this cup that I've got.
Oh,
They're massive, which again, they're supposed to be like a slice of pizza just rolled up into what is essentially like a cinnamon roll kind of thing.
So can you buy those, did you say, to have as well? Can you?
They're not mass produced, so you can get them at like a grocery store. So I'd have to like order them out and bring them in. But that would be my appetizer either way. I'd just get like a double order or a single order because again, I don't want everyone getting too full. But just getting started with something that again, I think most everyone would enjoy and something that most people probably would not be offended by.
That's a great start. I'm not going to lie. Like I said, you've won me already with pizza. So who's your first guest?
My first guest, I'm going to have to just let the cat out of the bag now. I'm going to disappoint Joey. I'm not going to be returning the favor and inviting him as much as I would like to. If I had a 4th guest, I would invite Joey. But I really wanted to invite these 3 people. My first guest would be James Clement, also known as Mr. Sunday Movies. He's kind of my podcasting idol. He's the host, co-host of the Weekly Planet podcast. He's from Australia, and he's just been doing the whole thing for over 10 years at this point. He started as an editor and a contributor to comicbookmovie.com. He got the idea to create a podcast that would coincide with the website, and then it just kind of grew and grew beyond what comicbookmovie.com had. So he kind of just took it since it was his baby anyway, and he made it his own thing. He created his own podcasting network with his wife. He's done the thing that I would have loved to have had the opportunity to do, which is monetize the podcast and talk about the most insignificant stuff for a living, but be passionate about it. So just getting to sit down and talk with him and not even just be like, how did you do this? Why did you do this? More just shared interests and just being around his aura, I guess, is something that I would just really love to just be a part of, be around for even just a couple hours.
Like you said, shared interest, that's key, isn't it? Because it's often, it's not about, grilling somebody or interrogating them. It's just about, like you said, sharing stories, right?
Exactly. And he's got kids that are roughly around the same age as mine. He's got two where I've got three, but his two are roughly around the same age as like my two oldest. So like we have shared experiences. We've got similar stories in terms of like partnerships and everything like that. Again, it's just more he is more high profile than I am. But again, I do feel like he and I would genuinely click pretty well. And I think that even if we had a disagreement, it would be in a sense where he would pull off his Australian snark, where it would come off more as funny and just like making fun of you in a friendly way and not just being rude.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So, what was the name of the podcast? Was it Mr. Sunday Night Movie?
Mr. Sunday Movies. That's his YouTube channel, and then the podcast is The Weekly Planet.
Okay. Someone you could get on the show, maybe.
Oh, I've tried, but he gets so many emails and requests. I'm sure he's just like, I don't want to have to deal with American time conversion.
Well, everyone listening to this, let's get him on. Let's get him on to Talking Smack. And the other thing I was going to add is, if Joey, if you're listening, you can be my +1.
There you go.
So we've got around.
I'll take that loophole.
We've got the workaround. Okay, so yeah, winning first round so far, both with food and guests. So, what have we got lined up for your main?
Main course, again, I'm super basic. I just want to enjoy my food. I want it to be delicious. I'm going with classic chicken tenders and with a side of fries, side of coleslaw, if that's what you prefer. If I'm making it at home, it's just going to be your standard Tyson or Banquet. Make it quick in the deep fryer, air fryer, probably air fry, just a little healthier. But if I could order in or cater, I would probably, as much as I hate to say it, I would probably try to get chicken tenders from Guy Fieri's chain restaurant. I've only ever eaten there in the Disney bubble in Florida, but those are some dang good chicken tenders. Like it's hard to find good chicken tenders, in my opinion, like really good. Like it's hard to do them wrong, but when you find really good chicken tenders, it's like you know they're good. And the ones at Chicken Guy, at least the one in the Disney bubble, those were fantastic. Like those haunt me.
And I just want to pick up. So you said a couple of times basic, basic. Do you know what? There's nothing wrong, and I think most people.
I don't think there is. I know there are some people that are just like, you're having who over, and you're gonna make me chicken tenders, and like Joey and Tim were talking about, like they're having soups and all these other fancy bread bowls or whatever, and I'm just like, not for me. Like I'm really weird because soups, especially in coffee and tea, I don't like those things because I don't like hot liquids. To me, liquids are supposed to be refreshing, not boiling.
Let's not bring up Joey and Tim's episode, because I think I've just about mended the rift with Joey on that. What I was going to say though is kind of like what you've picked so far, like the pepperoni rolls and the chicken tenders. I think of them as comfort food, and there's nothing better than some, like I said, simple, especially if you're at a gathering or a party. It's quick finger food, right? It's not messy. It's not yet. You don't have to sit around, the big plate, and it's not a convoluted meal. And I like that. But, sometimes there's nothing better than just what I call a comfort meal in the evening. It doesn't have to be multiple ingredients. It can be 2 or 3. As long as it's good, that's all that matters.
I appreciate you encouraging my poor life and health choices, Dan.
No, I think it's just because, I can see myself sitting down just with that, and I'd be really happy. I mean, yeah, but this isn't about me. So, okay.
Well, I mean, you're here for dinner too.
Well, yeah. No, I'm good. I'm good so far. So, chicken tenders with fries or coleslaw. So, who is the next person to come through the door?
Continuing in the vein of shared interests and someone who I think could help carry a conversation, make sure there's no awkward lulls. I'm going with actress Iman Vellani. Most people would know her as Ms. Marvel Kamala Khan from the Marvel show, as well as the Marvel movie, The Marvels. She just seems to be an absolutely delightful person who is full of life. She has nerd opinions for days. And again, with Mr. Sunday Movies, myself, who knows where we would fall into on conversations going into comic books, video games, all that sort of stuff, the stuff that I love talking about. I mean, I know I have a podcast about it, but I could literally just continue talking about that stuff off mic for hours and days and weeks, years, decades, which I mean, I have, but just having someone like her, as well as Mr. Sunday Movies, you and Joey, I think it would just be a fantastic conversation. And again, I think she brings a vibrancy to the party to make sure it's not just a bunch of dudes sitting there talking about, and none of the people I think here would be extraordinarily misogynistic or sexist. But having a woman's perspective on things in there too, just I think would help contextualize things sometimes if a conversation derails to a certain point. But I think Aman Vellani is someone who's also just she's 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 one of the guys. She's a someone who can just hang out and have a conversation about anything. And again, she comes across as someone who would just be a beam of light in a room.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I've seen the Miss Marvel show. I haven't seen the film.
Dreadfully underrated. It underappreciated. It got lambasted by critics, or not so much critics, but the bad part of the internet just kind of
Yeah.
broke it. The writer's strike affected some of that stuff too. I don't know by how much. And then Marvel, I don't know what Marvel did, but it apparently had like a $330 million budget, and the movie ended up getting cut down to like 90 minutes. So there's a lot of stuff that went against it. I think it's a really fun movie. They have a whole training montage that's also a slumber party that's set to the Beastie Boys Intergalactic. It's a lot of fun. Even if you have minimal familiarity with the Marvel properties, Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel, I think it's a fun movie that you should be able to pick up and just have fun with. You don't need to know the whole story of the MCU or anything like that.
That's it. That's what I was going to say. So what I saw in the show and her in interviews just seems like a very fun person.
Definitely.
Almost like just enjoying what life has thrown at her and not take. When I say not taking it seriously, I don't mean that she doesn't take her craft or the IP seriously, but yeah, just enjoying it for what it is.
Yeah, she comes across as very grateful and genuine. Like she knows she just hit the lottery, and she doesn't seem to take the celebrity of it for granted or anything like that.
Yeah, and I remember sort of back to your episodes. I know you spoke highly of her on the show, past tweets or past episodes.
Yeah, I don't know who I would have cast as Kamala Khan, but after seeing the Ms. Marvel show, seeing the Marvels, I don't know anyone else who would be able to play her besides Aman Vellani at this point. Like they just knocked it out of the park with the casting with her. She's invested in this stuff too. She's a genuine nerd. She famously had arguments with Marvel producer, the guy who created the whole MCU, Kevin Feige. She has had arguments with him about like, why do they call the MCU 616 when that's the comic universe? She has her whole theory that it's like Earth 1999, and she explains it very well. Obviously it's semantics and means nothing because Kevin Feige's not going to change his mind, but she is like that passionate, and she's now like a voice of the fans to be able to go and be like, calling it Earth 616 is kind of dumb because reasons. And I think her brashness in being able to just casually talk to who is essentially her boss and be like, you're dumb. This is dumb. Here's why. But thanks for the paycheck. I think that's great.
But again, that shows a real love for the material, right?
Yeah, it shows like in a lighthearted side to her too, because like it's something this is genuinely something she loves, and she grew up with the MCU. Like she's only 20 something years old. The MCU is like 15, 16 years old at this point. And so she literally grew up with all of these movies. So of course these are a big part of her childhood and her personality. And it's going to be interesting seeing how she grows in the MCU if they allow it to kind of focus in on her a little bit more.
I'm obviously going to be honest and say I'm not too aware of any of her previous work. So is this one of, has she been in anything else, or is this one of her major breakthroughs?
Ms. Marvel, I believe, was her absolute debut. She
Wow.
she was in high school, and she saw that there was an audition happening near her for a Marvel role, and she kind of had an idea that it would be Kamala Khan. And so she went and auditioned. She went through the process, and she just got the role. As far as I'm aware, like that was her first legitimate acting role. I don't think acting was something she was interested in pursuing, but she just couldn't pass up the opportunity to try and be in the MCU with the opportunity being there for her to even audition.
Pretty incredible, right? Because as you said, she would have been what, 19?
She was late teens around that time, yeah, when they were doing the casting, and yeah, she's portraying at least in Ms. Marvel, she's portraying like a high school sophomore, maybe
Yeah.
junior.
So very young, and yeah, for a first role, that is pretty incredible. And I guess the last question on this, I mean, I've been a bit detached at the moment from like the MCU and all that, mainly because I've only just got around to getting Disney again.
Not a sponsor, but could be.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Thank you. Is she lined up for more appearances?
She better be. I don't know about anything confirmed. I'm assuming she'll be in Secret Wars and Doomsday. If I'm going to go off on a tangent, that kind of gives you an inkling into what we talk about on Talking Smack. Like nerd culture is based around like what would you have done different? What do we want? Like, going all the way back to Return of the Jedi and Star Trek and other shows like or movies and shows like that, where nerds just speculate, pontificate, all these other 3-syllable words about what we would do differently. With the MCU after Endgame, like I don't know what you changed in going through it to Endgame other than making like Thor 2 a better movie. Everything else I think really builds up really well. Like I don't think there's only a few like genuine classics in the MCU, but a lot of them are just really good action movies, and because they have that connected tissue being part of the MCU, it all just culminates and builds to Endgame and Infinity War just wonderfully. But I think Marvel, after Endgame, needed to take a year and just let the dust of Endgame settle and let everything else kind of let themselves kind of reset and find a new arc where they actually just the pandemic obviously changed some things, but they restructured everything. Like WandaVision wasn't supposed to come out until after Doctor Strange, I think, Doctor Strange 2. And then Black Widow was supposed to kick everything off, even though Black Widow was supposed to be a movie, or it should have been a movie that came out in like 2017, 2018, not a year and a half after her character died. So like there's no stakes with that role other than playing off of nostalgia and emotions. What Marvel needed to do, in my opinion, after Endgame was build towards like a young Avengers team. So start it with Ms. Marvel, start it with the Hawkeye show, and build up towards what's the next step for the Avengers, because obviously there's going to be something else that's going to happen. There's going to be a global threat. There's going to be something that comes along that you need an Avengers team for. You've got Spider-Man, you've got Ms. Marvel now, you've got Kate Bishop as Hawkeye, you introduce She-Hulk, you've got a whole slew of other Avengers who are not retired or dead. And you need to create a scenario that builds towards like what's next for the Avengers. Whereas what we ended up getting was just here's a bunch of individual stories that don't feel connected anymore, and now all of a sudden we're introducing Kang, and we're hoping that you guys will be like, oh, the new big bad guy's here. And no one liked that movie. So like they really dropped the ball in terms of storytelling because they weren't building towards the Avengers. They were building towards Kang, and none of it felt like it mattered because we need to be connected to the team to care about who Kang is. And Marvel just completely missed the ball on that one. So like that's one thing with Mr. Sunday Movies and Aman Vellani, I would love to just like get a back and forth on where we think stuff like that kind of fell through the cracks with Marvel.
Well, it's going to be interesting for a question I'll ask at the end, but I think you've pretty much answered it for me there. But yeah, we'll come on to that after. So, what are we finishing? And actually, there's a question I tend to ask now. Are you a sweet person? So, do you like your desserts or your sweet stuff?
I love my desserts. I like a good like brownie or cake. I'll even like just a candy. Like I have a handful of cherry sour candies. They're just like little sugar coated cherry gummy candies. They usually have like a sugar shell on them, like an M&M, but it's cherry flavored, obviously. I'll just pop 4 or 5 of those after dinner and call it a dessert. But on special occasions, I will usually bust out a good chocolate cake, either homemade or store bought, because in the area we do have a couple of really good bakeries that make really good cakes. I love a good rich chocolate cake with chocolate frosting. And that's what I'd be bringing to the table here is just a wonderfully rich chocolate cake with some chocolate frosting. Maybe you can put some sprinkles on the side. And if you want sprinkles, you can have some sprinkles too.
Any cream with that? Or is it just a
I,
cake?
Just the cake for me. I mean, if you, if you requested it beforehand, I'll make sure we get some other sides. Yeah, maybe some ice cream, just because I do know some people like cake and ice cream together. I'm not a fan of the cake and ice cream. That's a little too much sugar for me. Jim Gaffigan has a really great joke about how birthday parties are a Ponzi scheme from the sugar industry because it's like, here's some sugar bread, here's some sugar milk. Now let the kids run loose.
Yeah. It's funny. Before we get on to your guest, it's funny you mentioned chocolate cake because I always say on these, I'm not a dessert person. I would rather have 2 starters than a dessert. But if you put a chunk of chocolate cake in front of me, that's going, right? And
Yep.
This week at work, I've started a great, the Great British Bake Off, right?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
So every week contestants bake something and then one gets knocked out. I'm doing a little mini version of that at work. So this week it started off and the contestants had to do, the theme was chocolate. So they both bought in. So there's one lovely chocolate cake and then there was another guy who did a really sort of big chocolate and raspberry cake. And so you have to have a slice of each to test it. So I was sitting there with this plate with 2 chunks of chocolate cake on and I'm finishing off and I was thinking, do you know what? Maybe I do like my desserts, yeah. So bring on the next 3 weeks of that.
Yeah, it's a national chain, but it is largely regionalized, like the Chicagoland area. There's a restaurant chain called Portillo's, which, if you're familiar with Gabriel Iglesias, Fluffy, one of his last Netflix specials, he was in Chicago and he did a bit about the Portillo's chocolate cake shake, which it is a staple of visiting Chicago. If you come to Chicago and you've never been, you need to find yourself a Portillo's and you need to get yourself a chocolate cake shake because it is literally a chocolate malt in a like 42-ounce jug that they take probably a 4 to 5 inch slice of chocolate cake that they have, which it's delicious cake too. They dump it into the milkshake and then they blend it so that as you're
Wow.
sipping the shake, you get little chunks of chocolate cake. And
Wow.
I'm not a milkshake person, but I will have the chocolate cake shake. I usually will only have like a third of it because it is so much, but I don't regret it at all.
Well, if I'm ever in Chicago, I definitely know what I'm having now.
You will be taken and wined and dined to a Portillo's. I will make sure of it.
There we go. There we go. So who is joining us? Who's your final guest?
This is one that's kind of heavy because I love him, but unfortunately he's no longer with us, and it's under sad circumstances. But my third guest would be Robin Williams.
Okay.
Again, I wouldn't want to linger on the fact that, like, oh, you're here with me for a couple of hours. I got one wish and you're back from the dead for this. But just again, wanting that vibrancy, that life, but also just being able to talk to him and see what he was like behind closed doors. Because oh geez, what the heck was that? The Lawrence, are you guys familiar? Are you familiar with the Lawrence brothers, Joey, Matt, and Andy Lawrence? Joey was the older brother in the TV show Blossom. He was the whoa guy.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So he had 2 other brothers who were also in the TV industry. He had Matt, who was the middle brother in Mrs. Doubtfire, and then Andy was kind of all around. He was in a bunch of different shows, but they did do a show together called Brotherly Love for a while, and then that led to them doing a podcast. And Matt Lawrence also ended up being a late season addition to Boy Meets World when they moved on to the college years. He played Sean's half brother. But Matt, portraying Robin Williams' son, he has some insights every now and then about Robin Williams whenever stuff like that comes up on their podcast. And he just shared this really interesting anecdote one day about how, like, Robin Williams was just like this beam of light on set. He was just the guy that everyone loved, everyone came to. But there were certain days where Robin would just be like, I'm going to be in my trailer. Come get me whenever we're ready to start. And Matt, being 13, 14, 15 years old at that time, he's like, Robin's my buddy. Robin's like my fun uncle. I'm going to go check in on him, see what's going on. And someone in the cast was like, oh no, Robin's in his trailer. Like, we don't interrupt him in his trailer. And he's like, why? And they couldn't really create an explanation for something that a 13, 15-year-old could understand. And so he went and he like knocked, and he just saw like this like darkness in Robin's face where he just was like, oh, something's not quite right here. And like I wouldn't want to pry into that, but I would just love a peek behind the curtain to the man behind the bombastic character that we all know as Robin Williams. Because like I feel like it would ebb and flow. Like depending on the conversation, you could see him maybe just leaning back and enjoying the presence and company of people who are enjoying life and who are enjoying the conversation and presence of each other. And then you could just see him going off on just this monologue of nonsense that is just would be the funniest thing you'd ever heard. I just I would love to just be in his presence, even again if he just didn't feel comfortable sitting around a bunch of 40 and 20-year olds, just being around and seeing his responses to things and the way he would just interpret certain conversations and where he would take them. It's just something that I would have loved an opportunity to have had any kind of conversation with him for a while.
I think that's an excellent guest. Yeah, because from memory, every time you saw him, he just seemed to be at 110%, didn't he?
Yeah.
And always trying to make people laugh. Yeah, basically what you're trying to say is you just want to actually speak to the man, really.
Yeah, find a little bit more of the Robin in the Robin Williams, just finding out who he is even at like a baseline level, because there's such a kindness to him too. Like there was the Christopher Reeve movie that came out just recently, or documentary I should say, not movie, that featured Robin Williams for a short time, because when Christopher Reeve had his accident, Robin Williams was a shoulder for him. He was there for him, and it was something that a few people in the documentary commented on, about how it was almost like, I'm paraphrasing and editorializing, but it was almost like Robin saw a little bit of himself in what Christopher Reeve became after the accident, what happened to him after the accident, and the inspiration that Christopher Reeve created for Robin Williams, and just kind of lit a new spark in him to see his friend who was literally paralyzed from the neck down, who was ready to give up on life, and just found that extra oomph to keep going and fight for something. And I would love to find out a little bit more about those sort of things. And I'd also like to know if some of the rumors are true about him calling up Steven Spielberg while they were filming Schindler's List and just doing whatever he could to make him laugh. Like there's all sorts of stories of Robin Williams doing all these things for his friends and people he knew, just to lift their spirits and just kind of be a servant to them in terms of lifting their spirits, while he had his demons that he was fighting, and maybe he was trying to find something in lifting them up that he could maybe find to help himself lift himself up. But there's so much behind the man that we don't really know and we'll never know. But having an opportunity in this hypothetical situation, I think among all the other celebrities, like Robin Williams was the guy I grew up with, probably the most, besides like maybe Jim Carrey. But Robin Williams is a guy that like stuck around the longest, I think, because he did a lot of the sincere stuff as well, and not just the bombastic stuff like Jim Carrey has mostly done. Like, you've got like the Truman Show and a few other things where he tried to expand out, but he didn't have that warmth that Robin Williams had. And I think that's the thing I'd be most interested in finding, is where that warmth comes from.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think Robin Williams had that. He had that something, didn't it, that just appealed to people. He wasn't, he was a comedian, but he would tell stories. He would tell jokes for all. Whereas Jim Carrey felt like it was very much he had that character he portrayed, whereas Robin Williams just felt like he was appealing to kind of all ages, didn't he? And just to go back to something you said, like battling with demons, and to get heavy for a little bit as well, is probably one of the first celebrities when the tragedy happened that people would sit back and say, oh, but he was always laughing, he was always happy, he was always joking, he was always bubbly. And I think that was the biggest example of what could be going on behind closed doors. Do you know what I mean? It's I think that was what was the shocker about it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember, I think he and I shared a birthday too. Like obviously he was born several years before me, but I think he and I had the same day as our birthday. which always kind of made me feel a little more connected to him for no reason other than like we get to say we get to receive happy
Yeah,
birthdays from
yeah,
people on the same day. I mean, he was everywhere and he was in everything in terms of like he was in comedies, he was in dramas, he did horror stuff, and I think that's where you could buy all of it from him because he had a little bit of sinister, but he had a little bit of warmth. He had a little bit of charisma. He had a little bit of sociopath in him. And all of it just blended into this human being that just was absolutely amazing. I remember when I think I would have been 13 or 14. I was home alone on a Friday night watching TV and I came across Comedy Central's Friday night stand up binge that they would have where they would just have a bunch of different stand-ups going on. They had like their own modernly produced ones, which like Mitch Hedberg and Dane Cook were some of the more featured ones. Adam Ferrara was one of my favorite ones back then. But then they had classic stand-up bits that HBO used to air, and one of them was Robin Williams back in the mid or late 80s. And I just remember watching him running around this stage, just doing the most hilarious stand up I had ever seen. And then there's one point where he like climbs up towards the balcony and he just stops mid climb before he gets to talking to someone. And he's like, "Oh, hey, Mr. Lincoln, how you doing?" And he just like it's the easiest joke to do, but the way he moved and the way he spoke and he just transitioned from one thing to the other, it it all blended perfectly and he already had you laughing. So anything else that he said that was even remotely funny just felt even funnier in the moment because you're already at 11 because he's at 25.
yeah. That's a great pick. And like I said, he would have stories, right? He would have a lot of stories to tell. Okay, so I'm looking at this now. So yeah, for me this is a winning evening. So the food wise, Sicilian pepperoni rolls, chicken tenders, chocolate cake and frosting. Then you guess you got James Clement, Iman Vellani, and Robin Williams. Now, one of the questions I always ask is, don't forget me and my +1 Joey.
Yep, of course. Best night ever.
Yeah, do you think the guests would all get on?
Oh, definitely. I think everyone would get along
Yeah.
pretty well. I think if anyone would be the oddball out in this list, I think it might be Robin Williams, only because I don't know again that, at this point he would probably be in his 70s hanging out with three guys in their 40s, someone in their 30s, and then 20-year-old Iman Vellani. But I also think Robin Williams is a chameleon that, again, I said earlier, he just kind of appeals to everyone, and he never seemed to be afraid of a situation other than maybe being alone.
Yeah.
So I don't think that he would have had any issue hanging out with people, associating with people our age.
And I forgot to tell you about the questions, but I think you know the format. So I'm hoping you remembered there's normally some bonus questions at the end.
Yep, I've got it all written down.
Okay. So after the meal, we're going to sit down. And actually, no, let's take a step back. During the meal, there's going to be music playing. What music are you playing at low level during the food?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about the music part. I'm not a huge music guy, but obviously with dinner parties, you kind of want the conversation to be the centerpiece, not the music. But you don't want the music to like put anyone to sleep, and the music needs to set the tone. I would probably say like 90s rock. It would be my go-to. Anywhere from my go-to is always Green Day, but like Green Day, Offspring, Weezer. You can call it pop punk if you want to. I'm sure we can find a way to sneak Oasis in there if you wanted to, man.
It depends. If I get a ticket, yes, but at the moment it's still too soon. Okay, so that's the music. Straight after the meal, we're going to have a quick video game. We're going to play a video game. What would you have us play?
Oh, I would make sure everyone's able to get involved, and we would play Castle Crashers.
Okay, very good choice. Yeah.
Classic side scroller, beat 'em up,
Yeah.
working in conjunction with each other. I think Castle Crashers is like the perfect party game because everyone's working together. You can have fun, but also everyone's gonna go crazy a little bit because at some point someone's gonna lose sight of where they are and they're gonna die, and then it's gonna be all mayhem trying to get that person to revive before everyone
Yeah,
else
yeah.
dies.
Okay, that's a great choice, actually. Very good choice. Then after that, we're going to settle down for a movie, and a movie that says, this is me, this is Josh. What film's that going to be?
The stereotypical answer would be a Goofy movie. I think I would want something again if we're going with this is Josh, this is where we're going with this. I would go with the movie Your Name, which I know I've recommended on here before.
Yes, yeah.
It's just an absolutely delightful, beautiful movie. Starts off quirky and fun, then it takes a turn and it gets a little deeper, and the ending is just fantastic. And it's a movie that I think would create a really good conversation afterward, especially with the people I've invited over.
Okay, okay, really, really good choice. Yeah, I remember you really spoke highly of that when it would have been on the mind wipe, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
Right, two more random questions now. So, if you could take us for a meal or a drink anywhere in fiction, is there a place?
Oh man. I know I said I know I said I'm not adventurous, but Slade, we talked about it in one of our anime episodes that he comes on for on Talking Smack, and I know he says it frequently whenever he gets to talk about anime and food. I would love to go to Tokyo and just try some of these dishes that you see in animes, because I don't think food ever looks any better, even in real life, if it unless it's like in an anime. There's some dishes in there that just look absolutely fantastic. I couldn't speak to specific dishes because I have no idea what they're called, but just look at any of the food they're eating in Your Name, and I'm like, that actually looks really good.
And the last question, and as I said, thank you, because I've thrown these at you because I do forget to prep you for these. But the last question would be is you're going to host another dinner party and you get to invite three superheroes. Who would they be?
This one is very simple for me. I would invite Dick Grayson, also known as Nightwing, the first Robin. I would invite Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. She's a huge Star Wars nerd if we're talking comic books. And then Iman Vellani's coming back. Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel. Again, I think she is kind of the glue to keeping things lighthearted. She's a light that would keep the conversation from steering in a way that would get awkward or inconvenient for some people. But she also is just an enormous nerd that I think would carry the conversation in a great way, or help steer conversations in a great way. Because I think again, Dick Grayson, Kamala Khan. I think it's Kamala Khan. It's the way you pronounce that one. We've got a Kamala in the election right now, so like it's hard to not say her name the way it's pronounced. And then Carol Danvers. I think everyone would gel very well, and it's just a bunch of nerds hanging out, having a meal again.
Dick Grayson one's interesting. So, yeah, as you said, Nightwing. So, a favorite character of yours then?
Yeah, Nightwing is my favorite DC character. I think I went with him over like Captain America, just because Captain America, he has a sense of humor, but he is very much more. He doesn't delve into the silly as much. I'm sure he would love to, but his personality kind of tends to steer more away from things. Like if I ever had a chance to meet Captain America as the character, the only question I really have for him is one that is just makes no sense to anyone else but me. And it's, who does he root for in baseball? Because he grew up a Dodgers fan back in the day when there were the New York Giants. I believe the Yankees were around back then, and the Brooklyn Dodgers. And then the Giants went to San Francisco, the Dodgers went to LA, and then the New York Mets came around. So Steve being Steve and Steve being from Brooklyn, I don't think he would root for the Yankees. I don't think that he would continue rooting for the Dodgers because they moved all the way to California, and Steve's biggest thing is loyalty. So I think he would probably just be an appreciator of baseball. I don't think he would be a Mets fan either, just because again, they're not from Brooklyn. That's one thing that has always bothered me is I'm like, you need to pick a team. I think if anything, he would root for the Mets just because they came in and replaced the Dodgers. But I could also see him just being like, I grew up with the Dodgers. I'm a Dodgers fan, even though they technically don't exist to me anymore.
I love that's the question you would ask him. I love it. Well, that's actually the last question I've got for you. So, is there anything else that you want to say about any of the proceedings?
I love Joey Fitzgerald.
Who doesn't? That's the question.
That's a great question. No one that I am aware of. Yeah, no, I don't think so. Like I've been sitting on this one for a while, and I've had time to think about it because you and I had tried to like knock this out in like back-to-back weeks at one point, but then schedules kind of fell apart. But overall, I've just been sitting on this one for a while. So no real questions unless you've got any other questions for me or
No.
just random chit chat you want to go on for another like 5 or 6 minutes so we can hit an hour.
Well, no, what I was going to say, well, if you just wanted to tell everybody again where to find you and your
You know what, Dan?
pod.
I do have a question.
Okay. Uh-oh.
So instead of I know you strictly you made that 3 superheroes to dinner for me specifically. You obviously cater the question to your guests, but let me cater this one to you. If you can invite 3 Mass Effect crew members to dinner, who would you invite?
Oh, what a question. What a question.
Commander Shepard doesn't count because they're a blank slate.
Yeah, okay. Well, it would have to be, number one would have to be Liara.
Liara, obviously.
Yeah, I'd be inviting Liara. You know what? This is such a good question. I think then, do you know what? It'd have to be Garrus as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely Garrus. He'll drink you under the table, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying, I think I was saying to Chat Tsunami in the episode I did with him, on my recent playthrough again, he does love talking about going for a drink and going to a bar, doesn't he?
He sure does. And then he takes in Mass Effect 3, he takes you up on a restricted area of the Citadel, and you guys you take some drinks and you shoot some bottles. It's he goes full on Southern redneck for a turn.
The third one's a difficult one. I think it would be, do you know, I think it would be Grunt.
It kind of almost has to be Grunt, I think. Grunt or Rex, you kind of need the Krogan, I think.
Well, do you know what it is? I mean, they'd wreck the place, but what
it's not a party unless there's at least one broken window.
But I think what it is about Grunt over Rex is I just love, you know, Grunt obviously in the game is tank born and he's learning, and it's just that almost like that childlike enthusiasm he seems to have for everything. And he's one of the only characters that when you re-meet them is genuinely happy to see Shepard in the game. Do you know what I mean? And that's always stuck with me. So yeah.
Rex is always excited to see you when you meet him on Tuchanka.
Yeah, that's true.
Mass Effect 2. Like he's in the middle of a meeting, like a cabinet meeting, and then all of a sudden Shepard shows up and he just is like, he hops out of his seat. He's like, Shepard.
All right, I'm going to throw this right back at you. Right, what about you then?
You need Liara, obviously.
Yeah.
I would probably have to go Garrus because again, he's your best boy, he's your best guy. As far as the third one, I do think it has to be either Grunt or Rex. You could just give me a coin to flip, and I would be happy with either one. Obviously, you're not going with any of the other human characters because Miranda is a stick in the mud. She's very appealing, but she's not interesting in the sense of like, this is someone I want to have a drink with and have a chat with. Jacob, Caden, Ashley, any of them, although Caden's dead, so no one wants to deal with a corpse at a party anyway. You could make a murder mystery out of Caden.
I love how that's probably the most controversial statement I've ever had on my podcast. You know, is about Caden. Yeah. And I know who's going to be messaging me when they hear this episode.
No, you could make a Mass Effect murder mystery game out of who killed Caden. It'd be everyone.
Yeah.
Thane also, I don't think he would be an extraordinarily interesting conversationalist. Samara, definitely not. Jack would be interesting.
I was thinking,
but
Jack. Yeah.
I also feel like she would be the one to drink to cause problems. Like I think Rex or Grunt, the problems would escalate accidentally, where Jack, I think, would be an angry drunk or angry drinker. So I don't know that I would want.
What about Tali or Joker?
Tally would be good.
Yeah,
I think Tally would. She's an adorable drunk. I think that, you know what? Yeah, I think I would go for the more calm idea. So I think I would go with Liara, Garrus, and Tally, just because again, Tally's she's the drunk that you want to take care of.
Yeah,
she's the one that you would, if she had hair and she wasn't in a biosuit, you would like hold her hair back for her.
And your house would probably still be intact at the end of the night.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just trying to think else. Joker, no, he'd just be telling jokes all night.
I think Joker would be pretty funny, but it would get a little old at a certain point.
Yeah, Edie would just feel a bit odd.
She can't get drunk. Yeah.
Who else is there? Oh, we've got Mordin. Obviously, Mordin. I like the character.
Morton would be fun because I think he would break out into some musicals. That
Yeah.
could be a good time.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess Javik would be Javik and this is a thing because
Zaid doesn't exist. No,
Zaid doesn't
Zaid's-
exist. Vega from the third one. I mean,
Vega might as well not exist for me either. Like I have no interest in him as a character, although in my most recent few playthroughs, I have come to appreciate the Carnage ability and the way it combines with the other like Singularity ability.
yeah.
And so like he has become a regular squad member for me since I play what is it, the Adept class that has the Singularity, the Throw, and a few other abilities. I can't remember the exact class name, but like those are my two go-to moves with my character. So that combined with Carnage is just it wrecks everything. So I reluctantly bring him along because he has that ability.
We need another episode on this between you and I. But
just so it happens, come January, there might be a special Mass Effect 2 episode featuring Dan on Talking Smack.
Oh, that could be good. No, I was because I was actually going to say, I guess the only two other people came to mind, which I'm really torn about now. So Anderson, I think I would love to have Anderson.
Anderson would be a pretty good one, yeah.
And a bit random, I would have liked to see more of Dr. Chuckwass in the game as well. You know, because she loves her brandy as well.
She seems like she'd be a fun drinking buddy too.
Yeah. So, let's look forward to January now. But okay, look, otherwise we're going to be talking for another hour on Mass Effect now. So, look, Josh, thank you very much for coming on. Yeah, please do again just shout out your podcast and everyone listening, make sure if you're not already, please do go subscribe.
You can find us on all the social media platforms at TalkingSMAC Pod. You can find us on your favorite podcatcher at Talking Smack, SMAC, superheroes, movies, animation, and comics. Give us a listen, tell a friend, leave likes, reviews. We're also on YouTube. Every podcast episode gets uploaded on YouTube. So if you have YouTube Premium or anything like that, you can listen to us. You don't even need YouTube Premium. You just don't get the ads, obviously. But you can find us on there and get all the latest updates and episodes there too.
Yeah, go find them now. And for me, you're listening to me, so you know where to find me. Yeah, on social media, just look for Casting Views. If you want to be on one of these episodes or you want to be on a Mind Wipe, just drop me a note and get in touch. Otherwise, I'll see you next time for another episode of Casting Views.
1, 2, 3, 4. If I want your opinion, I will give it to you. Come on, check what we've got, 'cause you need it. Don't make us get a spork and bullshit.